Hi friends, welcome to Raising Lifelong Learners. I'm your host, Colleen Kessler, and this is the podcast where I encourage you to trust yourself and your differently wired kiddos as you help cultivate their curiosity, encourage them to discover the world around them, embrace who they are wired to be, all while helping them discover their passions, interests, and raise them to become the amazing adults they're meant to be. Hey, welcome back. This is episode 202. Today we're talking about executive function skills. Now, I know what you're thinking. We've talked about executive function skills on the podcast before. Maybe you have been to a speaking event this season where I have attended and you've heard me talk about it before. But executive function skills struggles are things our neurodivergent children face often. In fact, it's something we face as parents who may be neurodivergent ourselves, and it's a struggle. And so it's worth talking about again and again because you get new ideas and new nuggets and new support systems every time you talk about it. And the reason I'm talking about it this month is because it is the topic in the Learners Lab for June, and I'll be diving deeply with the kids and the parents in there all about this, so it's fresh on my mind. And I wanted to make sure my podcast listeners got a little tidbit of that too, though you can dive deeper if you join us in the Learners Lab this month. I'll also be interviewing an expert later this month, and so you'll be hearing from her as well, and that's going to be great. And so I want to give an overview so it's fresh in all of our minds before I dive into that interview later this month. So before we get started, I just want to give a quick shout out to CTC Math. CTC's actually helped me and my kids with our executive function skills because it is an easy box to check. We know we need to log into CTC for a lesson or two a day. It's easy peasy. They do it all for me. It adapts to my kids. I just love it. And I'm so grateful for all of their support as our sponsor. So check them out, ctcmath.com. Now, let's get on with today's podcast. Pop your earbuds in, go for a walk, clear your mind, and get ready to just take a gold nugget out of this episode so you can help your kids right now, today, with their executive function skills. Let's get on with it. Okay, so let's dive right in. I think the place to start really is figuring out what they are. What are executive function skills? And again, I've talked about this before, so you might be hearing this for the second or third or 15th time, but we often get caught up in the details, so it's worth revisiting. Executive function skills are the cognitive and mental abilities that help us engage in goal-directed action. So they control our actions and our behaviors. They motivate us to achieve our goals, prepare us for future events. Kids who struggle with executive function skills have trouble organizing and regulating their behavior in ways that will help them accomplish their long-term goals. And so they depending on where you Google, right, what sites you land on, you'll find people describing anywhere between 6 and 12 executive function skills. I'm going to talk about 8. I'm going to break it down to 8 because those 12 sometimes kind of double dip, and I don't think that the 6 divvy it out enough. So the 8 executive function skills we're going to talk about briefly on this episode are: number 1, impulse control; number 2, emotional control; number 3, flexible thinking; number 4, working memory; number 5, self-monitoring skills; number 6, planning and prioritizing; number 7, task initiation; and number 8, organization. Okay, so what's the problem with it? What's the problem that we face when it comes to these 8 executive function skills? Well, most of us in this world, right, have some of these skills occurring simultaneously pretty much all the time. Right? So let's say you're getting ready for, your kiddo has a co-op class that meets on Tuesdays, let's just say. She prepares for her class physically and mentally. She has her materials gathered the night before, knows how she's going to get there the next day, arrives on time to class, keeps track of everything that's going on, engages, takes notes, leaves knowing what she has to do before the next class. To be able to successfully participate in that class, there are a set of different mental filters that help control the stream of events. When there are executive function issues, that stream gets blocked and things fall apart. So I want you to think about it like a funnel. The funnel allows all the information to get through in that stream, right? The information and the processes kind of flow smoothly into your kiddo's brain so she can make the class happen and be successful with what she's trying to accomplish in that class. If she has effective and efficient executive function skills, things will flow through that funnel smoothly in that organized stream. When there's an issue, that funnel starts to get clogged up and things back up, and then they start spilling over the top, and she loses some of those skills. She loses the ability to do all of the things because the stream has gotten clogged and she can't filter through and make sure this is happening and then this is happening and then this is happening and then this is happening. So we want to make sure that our kids have resources to help them when it comes to filtering those things out and keeping that funnel running smoothly. So let's talk about each of the different 8 that I described executive function skills individually. We're going to start with number 1, impulse control. Kids with weak impulse control might blurt out inappropriate things. They might cut you off. They might interrupt. They're more likely to engage in risky behaviors. And it's all related to their inability to kind of put the mental brakes on before acting. And so your kid might try things that aren't really wise to try. She might do silly or inappropriate things to get other people's attention. She might have trouble following rules consistently. Your kiddo might be aggressive towards other children, even long past the age that that is normal for, right? Pushing and shoving to get their way, trying to have the last word or the first turn, not understand how his or her behaviors affect others, and maybe not even understanding the consequences of their behaviors. Some of the things that we can do for kids who have weak impulse control is we can learn as much as we can. We can observe and take notes. We can role play, talk through the problems. We can catch our kids doing amazing things. Kids with weak impulse control hear that they are a problem often. And so when we catch them doing great things or we connect with them positively, we can start to offset some of those difficulties. Remember, impulsivity is not a sign of bad parenting, not a sign of a bad kid. It's a brain wiring issue. We want our kids to understand that things are a little bit more tricky for them. Just like we talked about in last week's episode about impulsivity, oftentimes this lack of impulse control is related to a neurodivergency like ADHD. And so we want our kids to have lots of opportunities for success and give them the support and the encouragement. Okay, sometimes our kids who struggle with executive function skills may have trouble with emotional control. That was the second executive function skill I talked about. These kids seem like they're overreacting. And while it seems to us like the overreaction or the reaction is kind of over the top for whatever the situation would warrant, it doesn't feel like an overreaction to them. It feels very real. They have trouble dealing with criticism and regrouping when things go wrong. They struggle to stay calm in situations. This can lead to anger, fear, sadness, frustration for really everybody around them. Your kiddo might be quick to become frustrated, worry too much or for too long about minor things, have trouble calming down when annoyed or angry. They might take offense to gentle criticism. They may even be too fearful to begin tasks. They might give up too easily on things that they're doing. They might be reluctant to get started if they think that they might fail. Sometimes our kids with weak emotional control might not make friends easily or even want to do anything with others. They might kind of shrink back. So we want to make sure with these kiddos that we're validating their feelings often. We're talking to them about what's going on inside their head so we can help them switch that inner dialogue and inner thinking. We want to role play with them and talk through what things might happen or what things have happened so that we can give them the support that they need. We might use social stories. There are some social stories on my site that you can use, and we'll link to those in the show notes for this episode. We're going to want to talk about feelings often with our kids. And then if their emotional regulation still is a struggle after we've tried a bunch of different things, we might want to get some expert help. Your kiddo is not actually overreacting. These feelings and emotions are real to them. They need to be validated and empathized with and nurtured through this so that we can help them with their emotional control. Okay. The third executive function skill struggle they might be facing is flexible thinking. Flexible thinking allows our kids to do the unexpected and adjust to it. Kids with rigid thinking don't roll with the punches. They get frustrated when asked to think about things from different angles. They struggle to make changes in their behavior and their schedules, especially at the last minute. Your kiddo might find transitions tough. They might have trouble switching gears from play to work and back again. They might melt down if the plan changes, like dad takes them to practice instead of mom, when they're used to mom taking them. They might not be able to learn a new way of doing something. They might quit in a huff if kids are playing a game using different rules than the ones that they're used to. They may quit in a huff if the kids won't play by their rules. They might annoy friends and family when they keep restating their own opinions of something and discounting other positions and opinions. When our kids struggle with flexible thinking, we want to help them avoid that rigidity. We want to bend the rules sometimes. We want to have dessert for dinner, ice cream for dinner one day, do something different, change it up, change the routine up regularly. We want to tell jokes, riddles, puzzlers. We want to help them not take themselves too seriously. We want to teach self-talk and change up the routine as regularly as we can. We want to read books about literal thinkers like Amelia Bedelia and talk about the problems that ensue because they're so rigid in their thinking. When kids have strong, flexible thinking skills, they're better able to solve problems. They're better able to engage in positive interactions and focus. They can work through change and transitions when they are able to shift their focus. It takes time to develop this skill, but we can do it. We want our kids to be flexible in their thinking because it helps them long term. Okay, next one, working memory. Working memory helps our kids keep key information in mind. So we want to make sure that kids are constantly working on their memory skills. Kids with weak working memory have trouble remembering directions, even if they've taken notes or you've repeated them several times. They are significantly impeded in their ability to complete tasks because their working memory isn't something they can draw from easily. If your kiddo struggles with working memory, they might need to reread text several times, have difficulty following multi-step instructions, struggle to stay engaged in classes and co-ops and lectures and field trips. They might have test anxiety, especially with multiple choice tests because there's too many options for them to choose from. They might need more time and repetition to understand new concepts. They might show inconsistent performance, and they might display a lack of focus, possibly showing attention difficulties. So what we can do to help our kids when they're displaying working memory struggles is we can encourage reading. Reading a lot and often helps them with their working memory because they're working on stories and storytelling. We can help them practice visualization skills. Eating memory-boosting foods can help them. I'm not a nutritionist, so look them up. We've read about things like berries and certain kinds of nuts and omega-3 and 6 fatty acids. But again, I'm not a nutritionist, so you're going to want to look those up. But they do work. Have your child teach you. Teaching somebody else makes it stick in a different way. It uses different modalities in the brain. Play visual memory building games with your kids. Break things up into smaller chunks, information, tasks, things like that. Play card games. Card games, interestingly, especially those where you're like counting trumps, keeping track of who's played what, things like that are really great for working memory. Remember to have patience with your kids who struggle with this. Be encouraging, keep emotional stress to a minimum. If your kiddo's worried about performing well or disappointing you, it adds another layer of stress, and this is going to tax their working memory even more. I want to take a minute and tell you all about CTC Math. CTC Math is our current sponsor of the podcast, and we are so grateful to them. But beyond that, It's the math program that I buy and use with my own kids all year long, and with my 14-year-old, my 12-year-old, and my 9-year-old. I love, love, love it because for one low price, we get access to K-12 curriculum for all of the kids, which is fabulous when you've got neurodiverse kids because some of your kids are really great at math and can accelerate through it very quickly and want to, and others of your kids may struggle with that. Remember, we've talked about asynchrony before on this podcast. And asynchronous kids are many ages at once. That includes academic ages. So I've got one kid in particular who loves the fact that I allow him to take the end of unit tests at the beginning of each new unit, and whichever concept he already understands and has already grasped, he can skip. Kind of feels like he's gaming the system, right? But my point is, why teach him something he's already learned? Why reteach and make him dislike the subject when I can focus on the gaps that he has in his math curriculum, math education, and move him forward? So last year, using this process, he finished a year and a half of math, and I didn't have to buy a new program because when you subscribe to CTC, you get access to all of the levels K-12. And then one of my other kids who struggles a little bit with math was able to take the math in a very sequential way and is going through it basically one grade level at a time. It's perfect for them. Another one of my kids is a little bit behind where they may have been if they were going to a traditional school setting because they've focused on other things. And so that particular child is able to go back a couple grade levels, brush up the skills they've missed, and then come back to the level that they're on when they feel confident in those skills. It offers the most supreme level of flexibility for a family who has asynchronous kids. I highly recommend you check them out if you're looking for a new math program, especially if you're looking for a math program for asynchronous kids, for gifted kids, or for kids in a family full of different abilities, because they have great prices for family subscriptions as well as individual subscriptions. They also have, which I think is absolutely amazing and so generous of them, a money-back guarantee. If you use the program and you aren't satisfied with it at all, then you just call them and they'll give you your money back, no questions asked. So you really don't have anything to lose, and you have so much to gain with the flexibility. I love, love, love it, and I am saying this as a user, as a parent who has switched from multiple different programs throughout the years to this program for all of her current homeschooling kids. Check it out, ctcmath.com. You will not regret it. Okay, self-monitoring skills. Self-monitoring allows your kiddo to evaluate what he's doing. So kids with weak self-monitoring skills might be surprised when something doesn't turn out in a way they thought it would because they had a different outcome in their brain. They might be surprised when they receive negative feedback because they thought everything was just fine. They might also struggle to understand themselves and why they do the things that they do. If your kiddo is struggling with self-monitoring skills, they might seem to have more tantrums or difficult behaviors than others around them. They might behave in out-of-control ways, even as they get older. They might be a danger to themselves or others long after you'd expect them to. They might be difficult to discipline, seem withdrawn, or have trouble interacting with others. They might not have great communication and social skills, especially when describing things that they've done or said or are feeling. They may not be invited for play dates or into friendships. They may struggle to manage their stress. So what can we do to help these kiddos out? We can model self-monitoring and regulation skills. We can talk about emotions with and near our child so they hear that inner dialogue being spoken aloud. We can help our kid develop self-talk and metacognitive skills, that thinking about their own thinking and what they're doing. We can model that for them and help them develop it by showing them what we're doing. We can help prep for outings with conversations and social stories, and we can praise our kiddos as often as possible. Just like our impulsive kids, these kids feel like they're letting us down often. Remember, different things can affect your child's ability to self-monitor. Things like tiredness, illness, changes to the routine can all affect them. So talk them through the situations that might be making them struggle. Okay, planning and prioritizing. If your kiddos struggle with planning and prioritizing, they may freeze up because they have no idea where to begin. They might struggle to maintain order and keep track of things. The lack of ability to accurately estimate how long a task will take is a big struggle for these kids, and they have trouble making good use of their time. Your kiddos might have trouble making decisions, struggle to anticipate the consequences of their actions, be unable to correctly calculate the time it'll take to finish a task. They might have trouble prioritizing and deciding on the importance of steps in a task and get lost in the details and not do the big things. They might be easily distracted or forgetful and have low productivity or creativity. They might do things quickly and carelessly or slowly and incompletely. They might show difficulties when thinking about doing more than one thing at a time. And they often have trouble with surprises or when unexpected problems crop up. So we want to teach our kids to list things out if they struggle in this area. We also want to go one step further and help them identify in those lists what's the most important so they go through their tasks in a sequential order. We want to help them set goals and walk backwards from their goals and set the steps needed to attain those goals. We want to help them delegate and work on time management skills. We want to help them coordinate resources so they know where they can go for help to certain things or for certain things. We want to help develop systems with our kids. In our house, that's color coding on a calendar. It can be as simple as that, or it can be more complex like project management software. We want to help them plan ahead. Remember, it's normal for kiddos who struggle with planning and prioritizing to feel overwhelmed when trying to divide a task into smaller, more manageable parts. It's also possible that they have a hard time understanding an idea or a final goal. So we want to give them lots of patience and lots of opportunities to work together to break those things down. Okay, so when our kids struggle with the next executive function skill, task initiation, they may freeze up because they have no clue where they should begin. They might struggle to start on projects or tasks without someone telling them exactly what to do. Your kiddo might struggle to get started on schoolwork or chores or a project that they want to do. They might have issues when taking a test or not be able to prepare for the day without assistance. They may have trouble completing chores or not be able to prioritize the importance of different tasks. They may be unable to get in touch with peers to make social plans or even to initiate friendships. They may struggle when starting a puzzle, a Lego model, or an art project. What we can do is provide external support. We can use hands-on learning approaches to open up discussion. We can model getting started on our own projects so they see us get started even messily and go back and fix it later. This is a struggle for a lot of neurodivergent kids, kids who are gifted, kids who are twice exceptional, kids who have ADHD. A lot of them struggle with task initiation. We want to provide structure for these kids, like time limits or deadlines. Encourage our kiddos to use self-talk, make it fun. Give them rewards and incremental steps. Teach them to reward themselves when they get through a mental block. Remember, task initiation struggles happen to all of us. We procrastinate. From the youngest to the oldest among us, we all do it. But procrastination can be a real issue when it gets out of hand and affects parts of everyday life and affects our kids moving forward. So we want to get a handle on it early and help them. One of the ways we can do this is help them with the next executive function skill that they may struggle with, and that's organization. Organization lets our kiddos keep track of things mentally and physically. Kids with weak organizational skills can lose their train of thought, along with their cell phone, sheet music, schoolwork, favorite stuffed animal, and anything else that matters. They struggle to maintain order. Your kiddo might struggle to estimate how long they need to do something. They might not be able to set goals. They might tackle projects too quickly or too slowly. They might have trouble remembering when things are due, lose materials needed to do a project or task, have a messy room, not have designated places to store things, be late to everything. They might not be able to go back to doing something after being interrupted. They may struggle to make decisions or not be able to think about or do more than one thing at a time. So when our kids struggle with organization, we can help them learn to make effective lists and arrange them in a logical order. We can teach our kids to divide and conquer. We can have designated places for things and teach them to use those designated places. We can color code tasks, subjects, kids, calendars, whatever. For a while, no joke, we had different colored dishes for everybody. So we knew who left their dishes out so we could make sure that they had clean dishes. and we could tell the kiddo who left their dirty dishes out to go wash them themselves. We can use whiteboards for our kids. We can set weekly clean and organize days, help them learn to be cognizant of time. Remember that organization skills don't come easily for kids. There's something that we may have to teach our kids regardless of their age. It's something we might have to revisit to help them through these challenges. Okay, this was a really, really quick overview of the 8 executive function skills with kind of a nutshell look at what you might be seeing if your kids are struggling in any of those different areas, and a couple quick things you could do to help your kids out when it comes to executive function skills. So it was a lot crammed into a little kind of microcosm of time. And so I want you to revisit this episode if your kids struggle in any of those areas. I want you to visit the show notes for this episode so you can pull resources. We'll link to a bunch of different things there. And I want you to be patient. We're going to dive deeper on the next episode next week with Sarah Collins from Homeschool OT about executive function skills and their struggles and how we can do to help our kids in a homeschool setting. But I want you to remember that executive function issues can vary greatly from one child to the next. It's not possible to make broad generalizations about how kiddos with these issues think. There's no one-size-fits-all explanation. It's important for us as parents of kids who struggle with executive function skills to build a toolbox of resources so that we can keep giving them those tools, different tools as they grow, as needed to monitor and develop those skills as they continue to get older. They're not failures, neither are you. This is something that's difficult for kids. There are a couple things that I want to point out to you and kind of point your attention to before I sign off for this episode. In the show notes, there are going to be links to a lot of different resources, like I said, related to executive function skill struggles, because I've talked about it on the podcast before. I've had guests talk about it with me, and I've written about it on the site. I also have an executive function skills workbook that has been newly updated, and that is available as a digital download on the site. There is also a link to a physical copy of that workbook on Amazon if you want a print copy in hand. So you can go over to the show notes and find links to the physical copy on Amazon or the digital copy on the website. And there is also a brand new executive function skills planner that is a companion. It's a planner companion to that workbook. That planner it will be linked. It's also digitally available on the website where you can print it. You can use it on an iPad if you like to use your digital PDFs that way. It's also available on Amazon as well, because if you plan to print it, it's often cheaper to get it that way because it's hundreds of pages. It has weekly calendars, daily calendars, and monthly calendars, along with some questionnaires and things in it. So like goal setting type things. And so it's a very, very big companion, and it can be expensive to print at a print shop. So it's available both digitally, so you can print it as many times as you want or use it digitally, or it's available on Amazon. So we'll link to both of those resources. We'll link to the resources of articles and podcast episodes already on the site, and some other places that I've found around the web that are helpful. We are also, like I said, going to be talking to Sarah Collins, an occupational therapist, next week, all about this topic and diving a little bit deeper into it. So if you need more support or resources, or you have more questions, you can find on the show notes for this episode over at raisinglifelonglearners.com/podcast a link to the contact form that goes directly into my email inbox, and a voicemail widget where you can leave up to a 5-minute message, and I can respond to you either on a podcast episode, in email, or in a voice message back. So you can leave messages that way as well. Again, we'll be back next week to talk with Sarah all about executive function skills from an occupational therapist's perspective and how to work on those in a homeschool setting with our kiddos. And I can't wait for that conversation. It's going to be a good one. Thank you so much for being here. Share this episode if you know of anybody else who has kids who struggle with executive function skills. Leave a rating or review on Apple Podcasts if you get a chance. And share. I'm so grateful that you spent time with me this week. And I'm grateful to CTC Math, our sponsor. Thank them again. Check them out at ctc.com. I'll be back next week. Same time, same place. Bye for now.